Hello, guys. I'm a little nervous here, but welcome to the Out of the Game podcast, in which I'm joined by Robert Ashley.
Hello.
Luke Smith.
Oh.
And Guy Kroll.
Hola.
Unfortunately, Jeff Green is not with us today. He's wife
Celebrating killing Jesus.
Actually, yeah, he is.
Yeah, he's running around his house in a loincloth, dabbing wine on his chin, with fake Jesus injuries, talking to his wife.
I heard that Manischewitz wine is tasty shit, too.
He's really psyched. This is a big weekend for him.
On the note, since we're just like ripping on all things Jewish for the moment, what's up with gefilte fish? Why does it look like, if anyone's ever had a dog or had a friend who had a dog, and you know you're tasked with cleaning up the yard, and you know how like, well, at least this is just San Diego, maybe this doesn't happen in northern states, but the dog turds turn like white, they fossilize. But anyway, it looks exactly like gefilte fish.
Have you actually ever had any gefilte fish? Because I have never had the privilege to try it.
I have, because, you know, all those years I worked in the grocery store, and when you're on closing shifts, you get bored, and so what you do is you put money in a pool to dare people to eat, like, a scavenger hunt of bullshit, and so it was always drink the juice out of the pig's feet jar, eat a fucking gefilte fish, and try to drink as much of, like, a can of concentrated, like, grape juice or something as you possibly can. Not, you know what I mean? Like, the kind that you're supposed to mix with, like, 5 parts water.
Yeah.
A raw hit of that. So yeah, I had some gefilte fish. It just is like.
What does it taste like?
What is mushy fish served in like in KY jelly?
Isn't it? Is that the same thing? Like, was that originally made by like burying the fish? Isn't it one of those kinds of things, like where you bury it with ash or something, and it sort of.
It was made with the blood of like Christian babies or something. Sorry, dude. No, I don't know about burying the fish. Like, what is it up with burying it when, like, you know, we always have these like fucking culturally obtuse notions of what other people do, and like the worst. You know, you're always into trouble. You're gonna slander someone else by accusing them of fucking burying something. But there's a few cases where like kimchi, which I absolutely love. I've heard in some cases is prepared by like just burying it with like whatever, the cabbage with the vinegar or whatever. But then balut, the Southeast Asian thing where you bury an egg and it turns black and the embryo partially develops, so it's like a partially developed chicken, and then it's a delicacy. You can get these to market and stuff, but that's one of those.
I mean, it is like a genuine like genre of food. I mean, there's like the I think it's 100-year eggs or 1,000-year eggs in China where they're eggs buried with ash, and the ash like cures them or something, and you bury them for like 20 days or 100 days or something. I'm sure the industrial process that, you know, people make them with now is different. But the reason I thought so with this fish is there's also like another kind of fish that's this gelatinous kind of gross fish that's notorious from Iceland that people eat once a year for this certain celebration they have, which I saw on like the, you know, Anthony Bourdain No Reservations show, and he had to eat it like 3 times during this episode, and every time he ate it he made this face that looked like he was being just like pounded in the ass or something. It was horrible.
Is the fish just naturally shitty, or do they like actually shitify it?
Oh, well, I mean, they bury it for you. What it was shark. It was like shark that was buried and like fermented for a year. So it was basically, you know, shark cheese. And it just looked really hideous. Yeah. Anyway, it's an actual thing that happens. So
just a mushy fish. I thought of like, you ever have carp, or like what do they call it? Bullhead.
No,
never.
I'm not even gonna go there then. It's another one of those types of fish where like the stereotypes are, if you go fishing in San Diego Lake or something and you pull carp, you throw it back, or you go and sell it to sometimes like there'd be Vietnamese people on the dock or something that would want it. And that's just part of the other, usually, like I said, you know, aversions to other people's food and poking fun at them and forgetting the fact that like Europeans love head cheese, and which is, you know, you basically take fucking brains and snouts and work them up into a cheese. It's got more cholesterol and fat concentration in it than like the entire Hostess factory.
Yeah, you can't think of anything more disgusting than what you might be able to find in a small town in Italy. That's for sure. There's some crazy shit those people eat. So, yeah.
Well, are you guys like? Yeah. Are you guys in, when it comes to sort of food that's off the beaten track, or just sort of? I mean, are you more what bothers you more? Is it taste or is it consistency? Like, what's more likely to make you hurl?
Consistency, I think, actually. Even just like a bad spoonful of pudding can make you barf.
There's a smell thing too. Like if it smells like the baby changing station at the Superdome, that's not a good.
Yeah, my thing's definitely texture. I mean, like I have a problem with things that are gelatinous in general. And I remember one time, being in Kiev, Ukraine, and and still being completely a vegetarian, and there being nothing to eat at the restaurant that I was at except for vegetables set in gelatin, and it was like these leaves of lettuce that were like slimy, and like carrots and other vegetables that were sort of semi-cooked and salted inside of a clear salty Jello, and it was just not great.
It's kind of for me. I don't know if it's the consistency or what. It's like offal or just like organ meat. I never liked it growing up, like the rare instances where parents would make liver or something. So anytime it's, like I love Vietnamese food. I love going to Vietnamese restaurants, but there's always an extent where like I don't want oxtail or like the tripe and sinew and that sort of thing. And I don't know if that's just particular to me or you guys feel the same way. The same reason that like I don't like octopus, because it's like eating the suction cup. I associate it more with like an organ and tastes like a rubber band.
Yeah, I mean it depends on sort of what you're raised on. I mean, it's been a while, but like my parents are from Guyana, South America, and the history there is a little interesting in that black people were brought over as slaves from various African regions, and then after slavery was abolished, they brought over East Indians and Chinese as indentured laborers. So I grew up, as a matter of course, eating roti and curry and chow mein and all sorts of other stuff like liver and kidney, and various sort of things. So I grew up with like a somewhat more adventurous palate than the friends I went to school with in Surrey, just outside of Vancouver. So it was always interesting. Like I remember the probably the last fight that I actually got into was in 6th grade over a friend who would come over to my place, just to hang out for the day, and had dinner, and then the next day went to school and was talking shit about my mother's cooking. And he can't. I mean, it was, and I think, and my mother had taken into account that this guy was, sort of regular, Canadian, regular white Canadian, and so she'd made chow mein. But it was, it was maybe she put like these like little red peppers in there, and I think it was definitely spicier than what he was used to. So he went off on the food, and I had to fight him. Now I'm a lover, not a fighter, so I'm pretty sure I did not win that fight. But that said, I mean, food is just one of those things that everyone's got their own particular taste. Everyone's got the stuff that works for them, and other people get weirded out by.
Did anyone like growing up? I don't think even aside from any kind of like ethnic differences in food, I would be weirded out by eating food that other people prepared, like not at a restaurant or something, but other people's houses. Like if your house, if you're not used to having a bunch of garlic or something, and then like that'll set you off. But like I remember going to this kid Alvin's house, and I probably did the same thing, talk shit on his mom's cooking, because it would always be like, was it like butter beans and like bacon or something, and like an egg salad sandwich. That shit was gross to me.
And that sounds pretty good, actually. Butter beans and bacon and egg salad.
Most of us, like Robert and Luke, did you grow up on the other end where, like I did? And this is a radical change, I'd say, in the past 20 years. It's like, like my parents eat nothing but it's just the same shit. Like a steak is eating out, and then it's like some kind of like hamburger helper or the blandest spaghetti, and then the exotic is a taco, and it was basically like a Lawry's preformed taco shell with hamburger meat inside it, and then like some stuff called salsa that was basically just like ketchup. Some like cheese on it or something.
Mama Smith was actually a pretty good cook. We had probably like 20 to 30 core dishes, and she would just rotate between cooking different ones, depending on like when she'd get home from work. I mean, we'd have like pastas. Like I remember when I was a young kid, we had this stuff called casserole. I don't know.
Exotic casserole.
I don't really know what. I mean, I won't eat anything to this day that's called casserole. Like I'm still like a 12-year-old or an 8-year-old intellectually. Because casserole when I was real young, that was like when we were poor. That was whatever we had in the pantry thrown into a glass pan with some cream of something soup added to it and baked. That shit I will not. Tuna casserole, no. Absolutely not. Chicken cacciatore casserole, absolutely not. Steak and potatoes casserole, no. If it has the word casserole in it, to me it's like some sort of disgusting science project that was left in the oven on 350 for an hour, and then it's like, ding, look what's for dinner, and you have to cut through it with it. Just no, absolutely not. But when I was
you just described like the entire menu at my house.
Yeah,
like that and hamburger helper. That's about it.
Well,
that is actually not true. But go on.
I was going to say that's an interesting.
What did you grow up in my house?
I've had dinner at your house many times, and I was like always amazed by the fact that you prepare food that's better than what I would pay for in a restaurant, and I'm just not used to that happening in someone's house because
I'm talking about my house. I'm talking about my house growing up.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant
my house
your place now. Yeah, so I was like, that's just like you're just self-deprecating for the fun.
No.
Okay,
No, I don't make casserole. I don't make chicken cacciatore casserole in my apartment. But I'm talking about like when I was a kid growing up, it was all like hamburger helper and weird ass like single dish casseroles, like Luke's talking about, where like everything is a combination of like egg noodles and cream of chicken soup.
And Guy goes, I have topped that and say many times I'd come home and I'd be totally hungry, and like a typical stupid kid, couldn't make anything myself. And my dad's idea, like if mom was still working, my dad's idea of dinner would be to take a hot dog and some Ore-Ida French fries and put them on a paper plate and microwave them all together until the hot dog just like fucking explodes like Tetsuo's arm, and then pulls it out, and the plate is now transparent on the bottom, and then squirt like a big thing of ketchup on it. And then that's it. That's your dinner, dude. You just you grab the hot dog and dip it in, and you grab those and fries when you microwave a French fry. Yeah. It turns out like a fucking parasite or something. But yeah. So anyway, end guy.
No, I'm still recovering from your story. I mean, I got to follow up on that. So like, I mean, other than the fact that you had to eat it, and you still haven't told us what it tasted like, was at least sort of the adventure of exploding hot dogs in microwave kind of cool for you as a kid, or not really?
No, because habit makes anything less exciting. So it wasn't like, whoa, the hot dog exploded. It was like, that's like what hot dogs do. It's like popcorn. Mm-hmm. It's just pretty much like a natural trait associated with it.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say was in response to Luke's comment about casseroles is that it reminds me of one of my best friends growing up. And their mom was a single mom, and she, she's from Trinidad, I believe, or the Virgin Islands. And anyway, there's a dish called pilau, which is, I think it's derived from East Indian. It's kind of similar to biryani. And so basically, but it has casserolean properties, which is that it's rice, certain kinds of spices, and you can throw in leftover chicken, leftover beef, all these things and put it together. I loved whenever we would go over to a place having it because the shit tasted good. The problem was what I didn't realize until like they were teenagers was they were eating this more regularly, way more regularly than I was. And so to this day, my best friend and his brother, they can't eat it. You know what I'm saying? Because they grew up eating it so frequently. And look, it wasn't all the time, but it was frequently enough. And it also makes me think, like, when you for those of us who grew up either poor or from modest circumstances, there are things that, like, as a kid, you don't necessarily know that you're poor. You might know, or even modest circumstances, you might know that other people have more than you, or certain things that you don't, but you don't necessarily know that you're poor. And so there are a lot of things now that I look back on, and sort of see, and I'm just like, oh, now I sort of get, like, maybe why things went down the way they did.
For me, I knew, I mean, not to talk it up like, yeah, man, like I got like working class cred. But I knew when we went to the food bank regularly when my dad was an alcoholic and my mom was supporting all of us. It's like, and then when my mom because I despise powdered milk, but she'd trick me because she'd get like a jug of regular milk, like a gallon of regular milk once like every 3 months and keep the thing and then just pour the powdered milk into it and put the cap back on. I would taste that. I knew I was poor. The taste of powdered milk is like someone come up to your house and like putting a condemned notice on your door.
Man, I was all about canned condensed milk. That like
That's sweet though.
canned
Yeah,
milk.
that's like a dessert drink.
Love condensed milk.
I used to love that. Yeah, I mean that would explain why I put on the pounds early in life. But I used to have that in my cereal, in like my Count Chocula.
You ate a bowl of cereal with fucking condensed milk?
Yeah, like
shit.
often. Yeah,
I've never had it.
Have you ever had like Thai iced tea, or you ever have like an Asian shave ice with like red bean or something, and they'll put like the condensed milk on top of it?
Yeah,
You might not have known it was condensed milk, but
it's this really sweet, like it doesn't have a lot of at least maybe it does like nutritionally, but it doesn't taste like it has a lot of fat to it. It's pretty watery, but it's like really sweet and it just has this particular flavor. And yeah, it's like part of a lot of desserts, like Indian desserts and Southeast Asian desserts, but also a big part of like Southern American cooking.
Yeah, I grew up on that. We would break that out on toast, actually. Parents would, toast some bread and sort of lay it out on that. So for me, later on in life, when I encountered like Thai iced tea and things like that, I was already prepped on condensed milk. And then on top of it, there's this Christmas punch from the Caribbean. My mom calls it punch de creme. And you make it with rum, condensed milk, bitters, and I think like a little lemon peel and some other things that go into it. And that stuff will put you on your ass, and it tastes so good. It's so sweet. It's awesome.
That sounds pretty rad, actually.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to brew some for the crew.
All right.
did it
Send it via email. Attach it.
I figured at this point I should tell the listeners that we do have a plan. We sort of reversed our order this week. We're doing some rambling, and we're going to talk about what we're consuming. In this case, literally food, but other media and stuff as well. And the second half, have a more directed discussion. But now, before I forget, what the hell? I had one final food comment.
We're talking about
well, here's what it is. Does this, and this will lead. I think this will lead into one thing that I've been consuming. Do you ever, as you get older, I started to kind of appreciate, as much as I love, awesome food, I started to appreciate sort of the Spartan diet my dad ate, where he could eat, like a can of Dinty Moore stew over and over again for 10 years. That would be dinner, or that would be lunch or something, or like you just some beans in a bowl or something. I mean, and I don't know if it's a pride and, like, hey, I could, you read about guys like, Chris McCandless, the tragedy story of the guy who went to Alaska and ended up starving to death. But, prior to that, he was doing all right for himself and brought a 40-pound bag of rice and took a canoe from the Colorado River all the way down to Mexico. And, I mean, there's something to me that's appealing when I go a week and I'm like, I haven't had anything but, and it's something ridiculously simple, like I can't, like I took 5 types of beans, some tomatoes and corn, and mixed them up into a giant bowl and just ate that with like chips or something and used that for like a meal every day of the week. I don't know if that's just like,
I think it's a manliness thing. I think it's a manliness thing. Like I also romanticize like simple things like I even though I don't eat much meat, at least I sort of fantasize about like being the kind of guy who could come home and have dinner be just some like slices of salami and beer, or there are a lot of like cans of anchovies. Like my dad.
Where have all the good men gone, and where are all the gods? Where's the streetwise Hercules to fight the rising odds? Isn't there a white knight upon the fiery steed? Late at night I toss and turn, I dream of what I need a hero. I'm holding out for a hero till the end of the night. He's gotta be strong and he's gotta be fast and he's gotta be fresh from the fight. I need a hero. I'm holding out for a hero till the morning.
Okay, we're back after some technical difficulties. Finishing that thought, the whole nonsense about Zimbabwe that I was getting at is just that it's the 2009 version of what our parents would say when they would remind us to eat everything on our plate because there were starving children in China. But I think for me that makes sense because it's one thing to hear all this sort of thing when you're young, and it's for me it's not. It wasn't until much later in life when I can actually really put myself in any kind of position where there's like legitimate empathy for what's, what a situation is outside of my own experience.
So to you, eating beans and tortilla chips brings you closer to Zimbabwe.
No, it doesn't. And fuck you for saying that. Maybe I was saying that. So that's good. You give me the chance to clarify. It doesn't, but it makes me feel like less. I don't know, less in this gross sense of over entitlement. I think you tend to get when you're in an affluent society, right? And when your notion of catastrophe is just like a slight, anything that slightly diminishes what you're familiar with, your comfort level. So anything that shows me I can reduce my comfort level and still be cool with it is good.
Yeah, because you get worried about what happens if you let me loose in the woods. Like, I think I would probably die in a day or two. Like, I just can't take care of myself, And I think trying to test the boundaries of what you're comfortable with is a nice thing to do. I wish I did that more.
All of this from eating the same thing every day, which I do exclusively because I'm lazy.
What do you eat every day?
It's a way to romanticize laziness.
I have a bowl of oatmeal every morning with peanut butter. Just a dollop of peanut butter. I have a chicken sandwich for lunch. I have some almonds in the afternoon. And then I have chicken at dinner. Like chicken breast or something. And that's it every day. Same exact thing. And I have yogurt either for breakfast, if I don't have oatmeal, or before bed.
That sounds positively electrifying.
That doesn't make me feel manly at all. It actually makes me feel like a huge wuss. Because I don't get to, I'm not eating anything sweet or bloody or delicious.
Are you dieting, or is it just sort of that sort of stuff that is comfort food in a way, and it's easy to prepare?
It's easy to prepare, and it's high protein. I'm spending a lot of protein these days.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the closest I can get to bring this around into into another aspect of what you're consuming is blood and high protein. So I'm reading a book. Well, I'm not reading. I read a book a week ago called "The Wreck of the Medusa," and it is about the infamous French shipwreck and the notorious results. Are any of you familiar with this story?
I am not.
I am not.
1816, during the Restoration. This is Restoration in France after you had the Revolution, you had Napoleon's rise, you had Napoleon's fall. You had the 100 Days when he rose again, and then he was basically finally, exiled for good. But during this time, this is a restoration of the French monarchy. France was interested in regaining some of its influence in its colonies, in this case Senegal. So they, among many other things, they organized an expedition, basically not an expedition, but just a large group of people, soldiers, settlers, craftspeople, to head down to Senegal, which had the British had basically been taking over, and they had an amicable deal worked out where the French were going to ease their way back in. So they send this ship down there, and the important part about it being in the Restoration is that what it meant was that anyone who was Republican or in support of either the revolution or was a Bonapartist was basically ostracized. I mean, they had to push them aside in society. But like in all countries where you have a radical change in government, you can't sweep everyone under the rug because chances are you need them in order to support your infrastructure to do what you're doing. But they ended up putting a bunch of old and inexperienced sailors in captain positions, admiral positions. And so long story short, on the Medusa, which was the lead boat in this trip, had an absolute buffoon on it, a guy who his experience was, real experience at sea was 40 years prior, and never really proved himself there. And then he happened to have quite a few people who were totally capable beneath him, but who were either, Bonapartists or Republicans. So anyway, on the way south, off the bank of West Africa, there's a giant, about 50 miles wide and 100 miles long, a giant sandbank called the Arguin Bank, and it's just disastrous for ships if they get anywhere near it. And so the idiot captain failed to take frequent soundings and check their depth, and their maps of that territory were spotty at the time too, but just didn't take precautions, and they ended up beaching they ended up getting the ship grounded in the sandbank, and this was we said 50 miles out from shore at the same time. So things started to go bad at that point. There were numerous plans to use the anchors to rig to jerk the ship off, and they got it to the point where you could just about.
That's crazy, by the way.
To jerk, yeah. So they got it to the point where they could have gotten it free if they had thrown the cannon overboard, but the captain. Chaumeret was insisting. He's like, no, these are the king's property. We can't do this. And so in his idiocy, the ship ended up breaking apart. And then at that point, what that meant was they had to take all the smaller boats attached to it, pull them off, and see what they could do. Except there were about 400 people on this main ship, and a combination of there actually not being room and the people basically saying there wasn't room and forcing everyone else, about 160 people, to make from the scraps this enormous raft. It had no sail, had nothing. It was just a bunch of planks put together with some barrels on it, and the idea was that they were then going to tow this thing. And everyone at that point was basically freaking out because all their futures were uncertain at that point. As they get this contraption together and they convince, they basically put the lowest ranking people and the least influential people on this big giant terrible raft, and they start to tow them. And then some confusion resulted where two of the towboats started to get their lines crossed or something. There was like legitimate confusion, most reports say. And then all of a sudden, people on one boat noticed that this guy starts hacking at the rope like wildly and screaming like, we're abandoning them. We're going to get the fuck out of here. And then in that wild melee, it just started going nuts, and everyone started cutting their ropes, and off they went. Then so there's this raft that's with 160 people now sitting on it in the ocean. Some of those boats ended up making it to shore. The people there, it was very difficult because they had about 100 to 150 mile trek to territory that Europeans had a presence in, and that meant that they were worried about Moors. They had nothing to eat. They were drinking water that they're digging holes and finding just muddy goop. And most of the food that they had left was they had hardtack or biscuits, and it had been soaked in salt water and it dried as hard as stone. But so they were like basically surviving off that whenever else they could. And their story is interesting, but the people on the raft, it went insane. So 2 days after this raft is going, there's a mutiny on board the raft, and a group of people just went apeshit with their cutlasses and started basically trying to kill everyone else that wasn't part of their group on this raft, shot them to shit, and the leaders of the raft fought back, and this went on for like a full day and a night. And meanwhile, people are already getting screwed on this raft. If any of you have been in the high seas, you notice, you know for a fact that a raft doesn't have a chance in hell. You're just constantly going to be underwater. It was put together in such a way that there's all these gaps so that people were getting their legs stuck between them and smashed and broken. They're trying to sleep, and they had to tie themselves to it, and they'd wake up and find themselves horrendously squished between planks and stuff. And then at the same time, imagine 160 people on this boat in a fight to the death with like blades, their hands and everything, throwing each other off, stabbing one another as they fall in the water, some of them crawling back in or saving one another. When this finally shook out, the numbers were understandably radically reduced. And then in addition to this, like this slow trickle of attrition, so every night, they'd wake up the next morning and they'd be down another 15 to 20 people. People just disappeared in the middle of the night. Some people would just start going nuts and jump off on their own. After this, though, then that's when the cannibalism started. They had a boat covered with bodies. The people on the boat had no food, and all they had for drink was these two kegs of wine, basically. And this is just tropical sun right off of the Sahara Desert. So just skin just blistered to shit. drinking like nothing but wine, covered in salt water, which not too good for the sores. So then, yeah, I mean, then they started eating one another, and it's not like they have a fire or anything. So the reports are that some of these people were just tearing right in and eating chunks of liver raw, and then they began to hang strips up on the mass that they had no sail, but so that it would dry a bit. And then things just got shittier and shittier. It was like as it went on, there was another calling where the people in charge basically excused themselves afterward by saying that they were throwing the weak aside. And so then there was like another series of purges where people were thrown aside. And then basically, I mean, the long story short, by the time they got down to the end, there were about 13 people left that were still alive on the thing. And when they were discovered by a rescue ship, they were on a boat covered in gore and strips of human meat hanging, and people just that looked like an absolute mess. And most of them were just delirious. You start to lose your mind. I mean, I forget what the calenture, I believe, is what they call it, where it's just almost insane, like waking hallucinations and total. Like someone would drop a wallet, would fall overboard or something, and they would jump off and try to get it and insist that they had to get it and drown. And there they went. But anyway, that story ended up playing a big part in post-revolutionary France, exposing the ineptitude of the monarchy, and also a really important painting called "The Wreck of the Medusa" came out of it, which is just this giant, massive canvas. And it was used for political ends, but it was also an interesting painting. So I recommend that you check it out sometime.
That sounds fucking insane. I wonder like how believable you think it is. Like when you hear these stories like that, where it's sort of the details are dependent on a few people who survived or a few people who found the wreck, and then like the story went on to become obviously like an important part of history. I wonder, what exactly. Elements are exaggerated,
Exactly, and this dispute, authorial dispute, began immediately. So, as soon as two of the key survivors, a doctor who was on board the boat and another guy named Corriard, began chronicling what had happened. But even before that, before they got back to France and were able to even publish anything, the captain of the ship undertook sort of like a silencing, hush campaign, and had a number of other survivors and people who had made it on the other boats and had to do the 100-mile desert trek to sign all these papers, basically saying, exculpating the captain, saying that there's nothing to do with any of this other stuff. And they were, they began to insist afterward that they signed these under duress, that most of them were out of their fucking minds and recovering. And because I skipped a ton, but the people on both things underwent like a ton of other hardships. Then it was a case of conflicting accounts, and for the most part, what happened, the writer of the book that I read is acknowledging every step of the way that any given moment you're facing multiple possibilities, right? But they all agree on accounts. They all agree, obviously, on the mutiny, on the cannibalism and all this, but in some cases they differ on what incited that who actually started these things. And then it became even muddier, like when it became a real big hot political topic, and internationally as well. I mean, Britain loved the story, and actually the painting was much more successful when it was showed there than when it was in France, because for the British, it was a wonderful example of like, look at these like idiotic Frenchmen that are their navy's a joke. They resort to eating one another 2 days after they're left on a raft, But yeah, those are all definitely real questions surrounding anything.
Yeah. Well, what I've been consuming is quite a bit more lowbrow than that.
That's pretty lowbrow in a way. So what you got?
I've been getting in this like phase lately. I do this with games where every once in a while I just lose any sort of patience for long games of any kind, like games with a story or games that expect me to play through to completion or anything, and I'll get in this weird thing where I'll start just sort of hovering around like 3 or 4 short games and or like tiny sort of arcade style games, and I've been that way lately, and I've been playing the hell out of them. So I've been playing the new Rhythm Heaven game for the DS, which is that sort of weird micro game, like music game by the people who make WarioWare, and I've been playing Burn Zombie Burn for the PlayStation Network. And I've been playing And Yet It Moves on Steam. And all of these games are just these games where I play for like 15 or 20 minutes and I switch. Like I put it down and I go and I hang out on the computer and I play another game, and then I go sit on the couch and play Burn Zombie Burn. And I can't really figure out what it is about games like this that get me going. I think it's because they're so like endlessly entertaining, and yet there's the promise of me only playing for a little bit, because I've been really busy lately, right? So I'm like, I don't have time to play big long game. I'm just gonna play 15 minutes of this, which is inevitably violated once I get into this loop of playing all 3 games. But yeah, I don't know. I've been sort of obsessed. Like that Rhythm Heaven game is if you're the kind of person who enjoys the WarioWare games, like it's pretty compelling to me. It's super simple, little tiny rhythm games with pretty cheesy music, honestly. I mean, you tend to think of music games as being like the music itself being really important, but here it's not necessarily the music. It's just these little like tiny situations that they put you in that are absurd and almost like not particularly musical, more just using rhythm as a gameplay mechanic. That like they'll have a tiny game where you're part of like a 3-person singing group, and your job in this 30-second long game is to sort of repeat the lines that the other guys are singing and to sing in harmony with them, and it's this like real cheesy lounge jazz song, and but something about the way the thing works is just really entertaining to me. I don't know, it scratches some sort of itch in my brain. But
the problem I have with almost all games of that sort that I played, not rhythm, but like what games are meant to have relatively simple mechanics that increasing challenges. Yet It Moves would be an example. It's one I played, but I haven't played enough to know if it fits the bill I'm about to outline. And it's just that they'll have a good concept, and it's just fun to interact with it. But then they ratchet the difficulty up so quickly that it goes from sort of like Sonic the Hedgehog at some points. Most of the time it was just fun because you were just going so fast, even though it was ridiculously easy, or like some of the most entertaining Loco Roco levels. It's just because you feel as though you're getting into this flow of the game, and it's like you just off you go. But then all of a sudden it's like 3 levels into some of these games, it just suddenly a huge speed bump, and now you need to sit there and really focus on it or try it 50 times in a row in order to get it. And I think it kills the joy that you're describing, as whereas these are supposed to be just fun games that you pick up and casually play in small spurts, whereas the learning curves on some of these and how quickly the challenge ratchets up just makes it anything but for me.
I feel like some of these games get sort of self-conscious about the simplicity of their mechanics, and they start to feel maybe it's because you're sitting around working on this game for a year or whatever, 6 months, a year and a half. I don't know how long it takes to make a game on that scale, like And Yet It Moves. Which, by the way, for anyone who's listening, And Yet It Moves is this it's a PC platforming game where the main hook is that not only can you sort of jump around like Mario, but you also control the entire scene that the game is set on, so you can sort of like spin it in 90-degree angles. So like if you can't jump to a spot, that you need to get to, you can kind of spin the level around in such a way that you can get to it, but you have to be careful because it's sort of a physics-based thing, and if you reach a certain velocity, your character will just sort of fall and squish into a billion pieces. So it's this real simple idea, and I think that it could work for a long time without too many sort of new ideas thrown in there. But they do quickly start throwing in these little puzzle things, which can be really hit or miss. And I don't know if this is what you're talking about in the game, when you start coming upon these parts where you have to sort of make little characters follow you, or get past these strange little enemies that it's not exactly certain how you do that. But
right.
But I've gotten pretty far in it. I haven't gotten too frustrated. My only problem in the game is they have these sections where you use these swings that are set up to where when you turn the screen, you sort of hit the swing, and then the swing takes you across this huge swath of the level. The problem is once you die, they sort of respawn you to where you go, but they don't respawn the swing, and depending on where the swing was, it can sort of swing back in a weird way and like knock you off the pedestal, or it can be like in some spot where it's not supposed to be, and you have to like fuck around with the level to get it back to where it's supposed to be. I don't understand how that was missed.
It's kind of amazing how many games have come out recently that use that mechanic. There's another one. I wish I could recall the name. And it's basically, it takes place in a sphere, so all levels are constructed inside of a circle, and your controls are the ability to rotate the circle in any direction, and you're just basically a ball. And at first you're just navigating a maze, but then of course there are spikes and other things that can kill you. And then also Loco Roco, to an extent, it's kind of like, I kind of noticed that when I saw, Yet It Moves came out and everyone was really excited about it. And it was like, well, is it that Loco Roco in people's mind space is a big budget game, or it's associated with a big studio, so it's not.
I think it's pretty different from Loco Roco. To me, like, I associate Loco Roco with like a feeling of squishiness. Like you sort of squish your characters like down these little pipes and stuff, and the platforming elements are necessary.
But you rotate the world, though. I mean, the central
rotate the world,
that you interact by.
But the feel of it is pretty different from And Yet It Moves. The game that I've played that's closest to it is another little tiny indie game called Jumpman that came out like, I don't know, 2 months ago. It was really difficult though. Like the jumping mechanics were kind of brutal. But yeah, I think it's always fun when someone comes up with a twist on something that is really, really familiar. I mean, obviously everyone has played a million games where you're playing with a 2D character and you're jumping from here to there, and what the fuck can you do with that? And when someone comes up with something that kind of changes it in a satisfying way, that's cool. But I think that another thing that people latch onto with And Yet It Moves is just the way it looks. Because like from what I've read, the people who made it, it's like 4 programmers and they have no art skills, right? Or I don't want to say art skills, but they're not used to making art assets for a game, and so they used all of these photographic elements. Like the world is made up of basically like torn pieces of digital photos that they use to sort of collage and make backgrounds, and your character is this sort of I would say pretty much badly drawn character, who doesn't quite move convincingly. It's sort of like a person that might have been drawn on some kid's notebook in 7th grade or something.
Right.
I think that's part of what attracts people to the game.
Luke, your any thoughts on that, or stuff that you've been consuming?
No, I really have just been doing a sweet mix of work and sleep. I haven't really had time to monkey with anything, unfortunately.
You've had 2 weeks go by, without consuming anything.
I mean, the stuff I've been playing is like it's like old stuff. It's like, I played some Halo, played some Call of Duty, but there's not. I mean, welcome to years ago. Like, it's nothing really interesting to glean from that. And my life's boring, man. It's like a lot of work and a lot of sleep.
We need to do something with that.
One thing I was going to ask Luke is going back to Halo. You didn't say which Halo. I'm assuming Halo 3 and Call of Duty is like. other than I'm assuming it's not professional reasons that you're going back to playing these games. I mean, what is it that keeps you going back? And is it any different from what hooked you the first time?
Oh, I mean, I went back to play. Actually, last Sunday I got together with the other Luke at Bungie, who's one of the engineers. His wife and kid were out of town, and we played through Halo 1. And we went back to play through Halo 1 because is that nostalgia, or is this what was good about that game, and then what was really frustrating about that game, or what is frustrating about that game now? Halo 3, a bunch of us from work are just starting to take time and play again, and when there's 7 other guys to get online and play with at night, like that's a pretty good incentive to get on and go run around. And then Call of Duty, I played a bunch more COD 4 over the last weekend, just because I think there's just some interesting things that those guys do in terms of always making you feel like you're progressing towards something. It taps into wanting to better your character or progress in some way in a pretty interesting way. And I know that those guys just basically did what I think Battlefield did ages ago, but they brought it and made it work better on the console. And I didn't really play Battlefield, so
it's part.
It's no crazy paper game where you rotate the world and lemmings follow you around or anything like that.
No, but
there's another.
I gotta say, the picture you're painting of your life right now is not very exciting. You're you eat chicken for lunch and dinner, you play the same video games all the time, you work and you sleep. Do you have a girlfriend?
I do not have a girlfriend. No.
Whoa! What does that mean? Does that mean you have more than one?
It's I have a good social schedule. But yeah, I just sit on my computer chair, and then it's propped up on giant wads of cash, and then I swim in money. And
that sounds appealing.
You want to tell us about your?
Nah. No.
This is what happened to the old Luke Smith. Before we're doing a section called "What You're Consuming," and you're implying that you're hitting multiple betties. You would have made the obvious pun there, but
yeah, no, I know. He's just getting. I'm getting old, man. I'm getting old. I'm calming down. I'm getting all the hard edges are smoothing over. Pretty soon, I'm going to be like, oh man, I think I want a kid someday. They're so awesome.
You know what this makes me think of? Have you guys heard of the Murtaugh list?
No.
So, I forget the first name, but it's basically Danny Glover's character from Lethal Weapon, Murtaugh. And he says, famously in the first movie, I'm getting too old for this shit. So the Murtaugh list is one of these memes that's going around the internet, and the idea is that it's the things that you're too old for, that's your Murtaugh list.
Okay.
Yeah, things I'm getting too old for. 1, arguing on the internet. I'm getting too old for it.
Yeah. That's actually good. That seems I can see why that would be popular and become a meme. It's just it puts it in perspective. So are we gonna be forced to work on a Murtaugh list right now?
I think that's good.
We might have to. For me, mainly because the level of alertness that's required as a this is going to sound weird, but the level of alertness that's required as a journalist, as opposed to being a consultant. So I'm in the room with some of the same people that I would have been in the room for when I was just a journalist. And I believe there's a picture out there of me on the internet at last GDC's lunch with luminaries, head tilted back, sleeping. So I've been known to fall asleep in public places, meetings, stuff like that. And while that might be kind of cute when you're a journalist, it really is not cute when you're a consultant. So, not that I had a drinking problem, never did. It was more of a sleep problem, not getting sleep. So, one of the things I'm getting too old for is drinking during the week. I just pretty much cut it out for the most part, and sleepless nights or just staying up super late. Too old for that shit.
I gotta say, I'm not. Older I get, the later I want to stay up. I mornings are just the most scatterbrain time for me. I can't do anything. I feel like helplessly a slave to like whatever whims that I might have to like read something on the internet for an hour or just stare into space. I spend a lot of time at the beginning of the day sitting on my bed like staring at the wall until my wife like, you know, asks me like, what the fuck are you doing right now? So the nighttime is like my time for concentration.
When you're,
nighttime is the right time.
when you're alone in your room, sometimes you stare at the walls, and in the back of your mind, you hear your conscience call.
Wait, I don't know that lyric. What is that?
That's LL Cool J.
Oh, okay.
Do you have
I-
like where you? I mean, like I was feeling that this morning as I overslept, and it takes like about a half an hour until you actually feel like a fucking human being. You just you can't think straight, right? Like, so the first thing I did, I woke up and I was like, oh my god, I really overslept. I mean, I stayed up till 4 a.m. playing Tales of Valor, so I slept till about like 11:40 Eastern time, and I was horrified, and I knew we had to prepare the podcast. So I was like, I immediately just like grabbed a book and started like, okay, what, focus on something. But then it's like I mutter something to myself. I was like, did I just say I need a nap? I was like, why the fuck did I say that? Like, it's the point in the morning where if it's ever going to happen, then I'm going to like make a cup of coffee and then like stick it in the cupboard on accident and pull out a box of sugar and hold that like and take a sip from it. It's then.
Yes.
See, I get most of my work done in the morning. I get up super early. I'm at work pretty early. And then it's like by the time it's like 10 or 11 at night, I'm like, oh god, during the week, I'm going to bed. Like this morning, because we had to get up to do this at a time that I think is earlier than I'd like to get up on the weekends. I ended up going to bed last night at like 10:30. I'm like, I really need to get like a solid 8 to 10 hours of sleep so I can almost be awake tomorrow, because Saturday's the day when my body's like, no, I don't want to do anything today, leave me alone.
So on a Friday night, you went to bed at 10:30 in order to do this, man. I feel bad. And then like we're on East Coast, so, like I said, I stayed up till 4. Fuck.
Yeah, I'm like, man, fuck. Friday's a bad day to go out too. I'm not there yet, but I might be getting too old for going out on Friday. Like Friday night, I'm so tired from the work week that I like, what do you want to do? Like, I kind of just want to like, go smoke a bowl and watch a movie or something. Like, can we not go out for like meal or do anything? How about I'll see you Saturday? Saturday night's a good night to go out. Friday night, not great.
I don't know if I'm getting too old for this, but I thought this was a very weird reaction. Like earlier in the week, I was, up in the morning and I was making myself my normal bowl of Cheerios, and I poured the Cheerios out, and this fucking like Hot Wheels car like came out into my Cheerios, and I was just so I was so fucking annoyed by it. Like, first of all, I mean, what strikes me is like that I have to throw this stupid fucking thing in the trash, and it was the second one that I've gotten out of a box of Cheerios lately. And it makes me mad that I'm like having to buy something that I don't even want, because it's not free, right?
Yeah.
I'm buying something that I don't even want, and then I'm throwing it away so it can sit in a landfill. And I just remember when I was a kid, like loving, anything that came out of a cereal box. I loved that stuff. And
Convincing your mom to buy you a cereal that you knew damn well you didn't like just because it had some cool like thing in it.
Exactly.
Did they tone that down? I'm surprised you got a car in your cereal. It seems to me like I haven't. Maybe that's a sign of being old. I just don't look at that kind of cereal anymore. But like I don't. There was a time in the 80s when there would be like a fucking like transformer in the thing. I mean, a really shitty one, mind you. The kind that you play with like for 10 seconds and throw away. And that was the burn. Then you're stuck with like the cereal you can't stand.
Yeah, I think that they did sort of tone it down. But I think it's not because they finally started having some concern for kids or something, and like the mental environment of advertising to kids constantly. I think it was more that kids just don't give a fuck about toys anymore. Like toys are just not a big deal to kids.
I thought you were going to go with like a theory that they had like the equivalent of like assault arms reduction talk, where everyone agreed like it's costing us too much money in this race to the bottom with like these increasingly like more fancy toys, and so we're all just going to like stop.
No, I mean, I think you talk to like a 7-year-old boy now. Ask him what he does with his free time, and I guarantee you, it's not play with action figures. It's play video games, or at the very least, like, ride a bike or something
I
entertaining.
don't know about that, man. Like, I know for a fact that they do say that toy sales are down, and that they attribute that to video games. Hence like the hard time that Toys R Us has been having and stuff.
Yeah.
But it just seems to me like such a natural thing for kids to want, like, just, I mean, play guns and go out, but then also just, I don't know, actual miniature things that they can touch and stuff.
Well, two things to that is, I mean, natural is one thing, but I mean, when I visit friends who have young children, I'm amazed at how early they are. They're going on the computer and going right to the sites that they're supposed to go to play the kinds of games that are appropriate for their age group. I mean, for me, it's like I didn't get my hands on my first computer until I was 6 years old. It was a Radio Shack MC10. So, I mean, there weren't even really games for this thing. I got the kind like where you had to program your own games into it. You had to make your own fun. And on top of that, I did walk uphill both ways in the snow to get to school. But then, and then maybe by the time I was 14, we had a PC. But kids are being introduced to computers earlier, to gaming earlier, and all those kinds of things. So it doesn't surprise me that that toys might be taking something of a hit. And what's interesting about that is that Will Wright, in an interview with Brian Crescenti at Kotaku for Brian's Well Played column, talked about how Will talked about how he wants to sort of revitalize toys. And there are companies that are making toys that are tied to like free to play MMOs or microtransaction MMOs, like where the toy comes with a code and you enter the code on the website for the game, and that unlocks things within the game. So clearly, people are trying to video gameize, if that's it's not a word, I just made it up, but toys, they're trying to bring some of those properties to it. I mean, so I think Sean, in that case, I mean, that may be a generational thing for us, because I certainly loved physical toys growing up and was introduced to computers and games much later in life than I think kids are being introduced to it today, and that's clearly affecting their tastes.
I could really see. I felt this way like when the Wii first came out and everyone was sort of going nuts for Wii Sports. I could really see people taking lessons from games and just getting rid of the screen. Like I could easily see Nintendo making entertaining things to play with that don't attach to your TV in any way.
Robert, are you saying someone's going to invent like a tennis racket or like a baseball?
No, I mean I'm saying there are other ways to play games. Like I would say that for like the wider audience that consumes video games, the thing that takes place on the screen has gotten less important lately. Like certainly for the hardcore folks, like it's still all about like being immersed in a world. But for other people who are playing Rock Band or Wii Sports or whatever, I think what's on the screen is not very important. And I think I could easily see, people taking lessons from that and making toys that are interesting to play with. I mean, I think like just that sort of tangible interactivity of games, if you could come up with ways to make toys that have that kind of, reaction to you where there's some sort of interesting way to play with them. I mean, that's what toys really are. I mean, when I think of like the stupid stuff that I loved when I was really young, like that I had that thing that every kid had, at least every kid my age had, where it was like this little plastic ball with little like inside it a bunch of little colored balls, and it had wheels on it, and it had like a push handle, and you'd push it and the little colored balls would churn up. And,
it was like the popcorn lawnmower.
Yeah. And the fun thing of it was just that it was this weird, you push it and it does something, and that's the basic fun of a game right there.
Yeah, action and reaction. I mean, growing up, I had these blocks. They weren't Legos. I don't even know what they were, but I had a set of them. They were different colors, and I would put them together in ways that created these humanoid characters. And I would just basically make them as superheroes and supervillains, and I'd create my own superhero epics with them. And when I look back at how I got into directing in college and things like that, I think, and my interest in directing movies, I think that actually probably stemmed from taking these humanoid characters and creating these superhero stories and battles. And I don't know that just doing that on screen, playing, I don't know, Justice League Heroes or something like that would have fired my imagination in the same way. And that's actually one of the concerns that I have about games. And partially comes from ignorance because I don't have children of my own, so I don't really have any direct way of seeing sort of the impact of it. But I grew up in a family where reading was really important, and our parents read to us, and we were encouraged to read. Our house was full of books. Our TV time was severely regulated. We didn't have a console, those kinds of things. And so is using our imagination was really important. And there are ways in which TV and movies and even games, I think, there are ways in which they can, colonize your imagination, because they sort of provide everything for you. In a book, you sort of have to conjure up the images in your head. You have to, what do the voices sound like? Those kinds of things. And, games, movies, TV, in some ways they provide that stuff for you. Now, the flip side is that, we're seeing, user-generated content and other things that are, Sims and things like that, where it's even more of a shared story and experience creation. And I think there's a lot of potential in that. But there's part of me that sort of, I almost have I feel like almost like, I'm of two minds on video games and children. Not so much that I think that they're harmful, but I really think that as we become increasingly digital, there's even certain quality of thought that gets lost. I feel like as we increasingly become a post-literate society, I feel like there's certain ways of thought and argument that become harder to manifest and carry through, simply because people are increasingly not exercising their minds in that way.
There's a lot. Go ahead, Robert. Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, sorry. Well, I was just going to say I'm not so much sure about the way that these things affect our minds. I mean, I think that's to be seen. But I think the one thing that's clear is that kids just aren't bored enough, and I think that's the real problem. I think creativity. It doesn't matter so much if you have toys or what kind of toys you have or if you're reading books. I feel like being bored is such an important part of childhood, because that's what makes you have to come up with something to do. That's what makes you have to flex your imagination. And when I think of being 16 years old or 15 years old and starting to play the guitar, I would have never done that had I not had just a lot of time where I had nothing to do. I didn't have all this stuff. You can keep your mind so easily occupied nowadays. And I'm sure that feels really fun for a kid, because you do have so much time, and all your mind wants when you're, a teenager or younger or whatever, is just to be occupied. But I think boredom is just really important.
I have a lot to say about kids and toys, because actually, to my annoyance, my neighbors tend to be the house where about 10 local kids congregate. And so it just means, because kids don't, between a certain age, kids cannot talk. They can only scream or yell, or and they're always out there playing. And it's it's funny. I'll just see them, and the stuff they do is interesting. And it doesn't sound creepy. I was out on the back porch reading, and they're just basically right downstairs in the yard, going ape shit. And they're playing. They had just a number of bats and sticks and stuff, and they were playing Samurai Siege, and they had said that this porch is whatever the castle, and the guys are coming around. But it was funny to watch them generate their own rules for play and then abide by them, so that when one of them would lose a limb by being struck, they would then hold it behind their back and then continue to fight with one arm or something like that. And then they try to do it with their legs. And then there was this kid. He could have only been like 10 years old, and he had lost both of his arms. And I see him holding his bat out of his pants like it's his dick. And he's running around swinging at the other kids. And it's that was such a bit of for one, he's 10, and is I totally admired that. But on the toy thing, I don't know. I mean, we can only speculate on the long-term effects it might have on cognition and stuff, but and how the extent to which imagination plays a part in computer games and such. But half the time when I was a kid, I didn't even know what the fuck the toys were. Like, you just get them somehow, or we'd have trading sessions in like in my friend's doghouse. He had this big dog, so like somehow like we could get 3 of us in there, and we'd bring some toys and trade. And like that's when, if you were stupid, if you're on the losing end, Megatron would get replaced by the atomic powered robot, which was this kid Marco got it. He had to have gotten it from Tijuana or something, and it was like you put a little bit of oil in it, and it talks, and it would smoke because it would burn that oil, and it would be like, "I am the atomic powered robot. Please give my best wishes to everybody." And so we just like playing with all that shit. But the thing is, we'd make stories about what we were doing because we had no context for who was who, and we'd make these big campaigns. And then even in the cases when we were playing with figures that were associated with a universe that had backstory available via cartoon or comic book, like G.I. Joe, we'd come up with our own campaigns where, like, I remember one where I convinced Alvin that Baroness had that she did something to double cross Cobra Commander, and I think he was just upset that she was kicking it to Destro and not him anyway, so we had to behead her. So we chopped off the Baroness's head with the hatchet and put some red marker on it. And it was, I mean, this was like the culmination, this was like the climax of this big campaign that we were working out. And then afterward it was rad because Alvin started crying when he realized that Baroness's head had come off. And we did similar things like that too, where like he had the Cobra Rattler. It was like basically an A-10 with some like extra bullshit on it, like a turret on the dorsal turret, and we tie that to a string and like spin it around in circles, pretending it's flying, and then like just let the string go and say that the striker shot it down or something, and it would be awesome and it would blow up, but then it wouldn't come back together afterwards.
But do kids do that when they play Lego Star Wars or Cars? The Pixar game Cars from THQ, or when they're playing, Halo or whatever. I mean, do they engage? Those games don't appear to me to support that kind of free play. Yeah, I
mean, if you look at Lego Star Wars, it's particularly interesting when you think of like Lego, and I mean how. That's interesting to me in the first place because Lego does remind me of old games because you're creating sculptural abstractions of things, much like you would have to do with pixels, with the available palette and size of pixels that you had at different resolutions, and it totally seems like this is like there's a lot these things have in common, but then the games themselves do nothing with that generative aspect of Lego play or whatever, and it's just about like here, and I don't want to knock them. I think, I mean, they obviously sell well, and it resonates with people. It's cool to see things that franchises that you're familiar with given that abstracted treatment, which again is kind of funny because that would have been a double abstraction back then, right? Now games have gotten so far graphic-wise that they can look realistic, so then we're deciding to abstract them to Legos, whereas before they looked worse than Legos when we were doing our damnedest to make them look as lifelike as possible. But yeah, it just seems like a missed opportunity. I mean,
I think it's really funny thinking about, like, have you guys ever read Douglas Copeland's Microserfs? It's like a book from the 90s about these guys who work at Microsoft, and they leave during sort of like the beginning of the tech boom to start their own company, basically making a multimedia software program, like a CD-ROM back when that was hot. They were going to make a CD-ROM that was basically like digital Legos. And the book was very sort of up on this idea, like his vision of where technology was going was like so creative and cool. They were going to make this amazing interactive Legos thing where people could build stuff out of digital Legos and express themselves and have all this imagination. And it's funny that how it turned out really was that like Lego just was another like sort of crass marketing thing to be thrown in with like Star Wars or any other piece of your childhood to try to sell it to you again for the 15th time.
Yeah. To be fair though, thinking about where kids can they have a number of options that we didn't have. It's like the amount of remixing and the whole just like creating parodies and spoofs or just flat out new material with digital means. Videos, audio, songs, and stuff. Even like sometimes a simple animated GIF. Like something comes out and then 10 seconds later you see like the most hilarious like parody of it possible. I mean, and those are things that weren't even available to us at the time, and that is probably far more conducive to creativity than playing BioShock or something, where you're like, oh, creativity is how I'm going to wield like X number of weapons against this creature that demonstrates this kind of behavior, you know?
Yeah.
So in terms
we need
of
a sound. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, in terms of what I was consuming to sort of wind this portion of the cast down, is so I was at a friend's staying with a friend in LA, and I was reading The Walking Dead because he had the entire collection. So now I'm entirely caught up.
Okay, and any change in opinion on it?
Well, remember the last time we talked about it, I just hadn't read it.
Okay, I thought you had said you'd read a few issues.
I think. You know, maybe I did, and if I did,
be careful. You're on the record there.
Exactly. If I did, I think I misspoke. Maybe it was like what I definitely had read a few issues of was Marvel Zombies, which I feel is like, you know, is fine every now and again, but I didn't love. But I finally did get around to reading Walking Dead, and it's pretty fucking good.
I told you.
You did.
I'm glad you're enjoying it. Yeah. I my thing there is, and this sucks with a lot of comic books, is that sometimes like the first collection or so isn't all that hot, and this goes for a lot. It goes for Blade of the Immortal, which I'm a big fan of. It goes for The Preacher, and then the problem is getting someone into it, and they read it and they're like, yeah, whatever, like I get it, it's not my thing. And in Walking Dead's case, it was interesting because a lot of people insist that the original artist, Tony Moore, was better than Charlie Adler, who took over, and I couldn't disagree with that anymore. I mean, like, just the Charlie Adler is far orders of magnitude better at illustrating that particular story, and also just the fact that you had to see, you know, the first few issues of a zombie thing. What's it? You know, how much is it going to accomplish? You're like, okay, there's Walking Dead, cool. What about that? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I read the first, you know, collection or whatever, and it really just didn't grab me.
Yeah. I would say the same for you, Robert. I mean, like, I'm not saying to go out and buy it or whatever, but I think a lot of people, it's funny, like how, like among gamers, it's circulating. You know, like when I got to 2K Boston, I remember walking in and looking at desks and seeing stacks of Walking Dead on multiple desks, seeing stacks of 100 bullets, and be like, okay, this is cool. But yeah, I mean, so if you know someone that has them, they'll let you borrow them. I would say to take a look as well, because I was skeptical at first too, because I traditionally haven't been into zombie fiction, period. And then Rory convinced me to keep reading it, and he was right over time. I liked it.
Well, I think I could see Robert's point about not getting into the first one or being hard based on the first collection, because the opening of that collection is very similar to the opening, or it's identical almost to the opening of 28 Days Later, which I saw, you know, obviously before I read this, and I was kind of like, wow, they ripped off 28 Days Later. It wasn't until I did some internet research and realized that both of them were ripping off the opening of Day of the Triffids, which I either haven't read or it's been ages since I read and didn't remember. But once you get past that opening, even the first collection, where it starts to get really interesting, and as you go further into the collection, is as it sort of gets away really from the zombie apocalypse stories and more about just a post-apocalyptic story, like what happens when society is ground down, how do people, or how might people behave?
Exactly.
And not only, you know, sort of the people that they encounter, but also, you know, sort of the group themselves.
Right.
And it's pretty well rendered. I mean, obviously it's a pulpy, you know, adventure kind of context, but it's also fairly grounded, and you know, I mean, they wring a lot out of that situation.
I agree. In the past, like, I tend, because it tends to be a trope for zombie movies, that of course, you know, the real monsters are the survivors, or the humans and stuff, and you know, and they made a big point of emphasizing that there. But like, it's exactly what you're right, that it could be any sort of apocalypse. It doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter to an extent that, like, you can be faced with situations where someone who you loved or were close to is then visible, but without actually their body's there, but they're no longer there, sort of situation. But otherwise, it's just how do people deal with these sorts of basically the breakdown of society, you know?
Especially because one of the twists is, and I haven't read a ton of zombie fiction, so they probably weren't the only ones the first to do it, but is the idea that everyone, so it's not only being bitten and killed or turned into a zombie, but that everyone in the world, at least as far as they know, is carrying this infection. And so it's not just being turned into a zombie by being bitten. Everyone's carrying this infection, so that when you die, no matter how you die, you could die from being killed by another live human being, an animal, or a zombie, you will come back as a zombie. And that they sort of play with in interesting ways.
Well, I should check it out. I really like when I read it. All I got was the pulpiness and the writing and just sort of a general zombie thing. I guess I did notice some promising elements of like the human characters being total assholes to each other, and that's interesting to me. So I should check
Come
that
back
out.
to it.
Yeah, they
Unfortunately, the guy I knew who had the books, he moved to Boston, so I don't know.
This is true. You're welcome to come on out. On the note of now consuming, did anyone ever play EnviroBear 2000 this week?
Yeah, I played that earlier in the week, and it's like fucking ridiculously hilarious.
Yeah, it's just this fun game. Like if Ben Guy and Luke, if you haven't played it, it looks like total shit. It's basically a bear is driving a car with a single paw, and with that paw it has to work the accelerator, the brake, whether it's going forward or in reverse, turn the wheel. But then the goal is to eat enough food before winter sets in and then get into a cave to hibernate. And you get the food by you run into a bush and berries will fall in the car. You drive through a lake and you'll fill with with fish and stuff. And you just try to like grab as much of it as you can. But the downside there is there's like risk reward is that you get too much. Along with the berries, you get leaves and pine cones and stuff, and they clutter your car and make it increasingly difficult to interact with any of the other objects, and you have to throw them out. Fish bones, you can get badgers, and bees will be attracted to the fish bones and shit, and then they start getting stuck underneath. They can get stuck on the accelerator. They can get stuck beneath the brake, so you can't brake. You have to then pull them out, and it's just like absolutely fucking ridiculous, and it's so low budget, but it's just fun. It's like the guy
the art looks like, I don't know, it's like it's pixel art, but it's it reminds me of kind of that time period between like the Atari 2600 and the NES, maybe like the Commodore, where people would try to do elaborate pixel art for just like the opening scene of a game or something, like to have like an opening screen. Like they're trying their best to render the natural world with a few hundred pixels, and it's just so bad looking, but it's awesome in motion.
And it's awesome in motion because it's so bad looking, and to see this arm that can, of course, if you're going to be reaching up to the right corner of the screen, the arm is getting ridiculously long, and you're like trying to grab a badger and throw it out the sunroof, and eating fish at the same time. Then you have to reach down, hit the gas, hurry up and turn the wheel before you run out of acceleration, out of momentum. And then the additional thing is that you can edit all the PNG files, so every asset in the game is fairly easy to replace it. So if you want the bear's hand to be a giant dick, you can have that. If you want the berries that fall in to be vaginas, you can do that. Or you can be even more clever and just do something that's actually funny and makes sense if you want.
I didn't know you could replace the files.
Yeah,
I'm sure that there's some fun things to do with that.
I want to see. Yeah, I want to start playing the modded versions of it and see what people come up with. On that same note, it reminded me. I did want to mention there's this game called Pencil Whipped that came out quite some time ago, and it's an FPS that's entirely hand drawn. So everything you encounter in it is, the walls, the structures, the enemies. You can see a video of it on YouTube if you search Pencil Whipped FPS. And so the sounds is everything is just this one guy saying, "Hey, I want to make Quake or something." but just on my own. And so if there's like a thing on the wall that's shooting crap at you, it's just, you can just tell some guy going like, and just the thing. And it's kind of weird because it's actually scary. You know, you're looking around through this like fucked up black and white world, and all of a sudden something pops up behind you. And it's like, it actually works. It's kind of cool.
That sounds good.
Yo. On that note, we did this last week. So like I want to like there's just no way that we're going to be able to get around to talking about the female brain, and that's like fine. We'll put that off again, but I wanted to make sure that you guys and Guy, Luke, and you Robert don't have other things you want to talk about. I want to hear about it.
I'm good.
Yeah, I hate to be lame, sort of winding it down, but I mean, once again, I think we covered a pretty wide range of topics, and I don't know how seriously the rest of the crew is going to take the Walking Dead challenge, but it would be nice if people find an economical and inexpensive way to consume it at some point down the line. So maybe we could have a show that sort of dealt with it. Where we kind of went into it, because I think it's not the deepest thing in the world. Don't get me wrong, but I think the four of us or five of us, we'd all like it.
Yeah, it's a huge. It's been hugely inspirational to me too, with like the script I've been writing. So I could also have, if anyone does pick this book up because they've heard us recommend it, send Robert Kirkman a message saying where you heard about it from, because at some point it wouldn't help if I can befriend him and have him take a look at my script. So I like that idea.
Way to self-promote, jerk.
Well, and also to like put the fire under my ass so I can finish this damn thing. I'm talking about it, but it's like it's so easy to just do other things. Like I can read, or I can like work on something from work that I've taken home or whatever, and just to actually like get in, just to sit down, put aside all other distractions, and just write fiction it's been difficult. Like I think getting paid to write fucked it up for me, because I would write like a fiend before I was ever paid to do it, and then it became work. Yeah. So
shit.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say there's only three reasons. There's only three reasons to write for me. It's like it's prestige, money, or friends. I mean, there's inspiration, I guess, is the fourth, but in terms of professional writing, those are the things I look at. Right.
And there's the whole just to get something. I mean, it's to get something out there that you would like to get out there, but
you have so many venues for that now. I mean, you have your blog, you have a podcast, all these things, Twitter, and so in a weird way, it's like that stuff can be. You feel like you're expressing yourself, and you are, but the thing that sort of takes the longer, harder route to get out, can often get pushed to the back burner. And that's like why maybe, throwing out a little advice, maybe take a page from Luke and start getting up early, rocking the chicken breasts and the oatmeal with peanut butter, and get an early start on your day. And maybe that the morning hours, that might be the time to knock that bad boy out.
I think that's
sleep is overrated.
I think that there's just something incredibly rewarding about doing a big project and getting it done. I live for that moment, and I think it's worth trying to change your schedule around to see if you can get it done.
So when's the next out of the game?
Whoa, what was that?
Luke
said, "Yeah." So when's the next out of the game? What's the deal? Need something to listen to. Or, I mean, the next wait. No,
I'm like, what?
A life well wasted.
What's your show called? I don't know, man. It's early. It's Saturday.
So I'm really pea-shy about telling people when it's going to come out, because I end up like saying it's going to come out a certain time and then it doesn't. But it should be in the next week and a half.
As well as your album, right? Speaking of projects that you've spent years and years and years on.
yeah. Me and my cohort, who are we are a band called I Come to Shanghai. Recently finished our album. That was a very long project. that I worked on, almost every weekday for 3 years, if not longer.
I was amazed by it.
Go.
I've listened to it all once so far, and I was amazed at the quality. But it took a little bit since I know you, and like I'm used to the whatever the Robert Ashley that I hang out with, and to hear you singing at me like you're trying to seduce me, talking about how God did you wrong. It was like awkward, man. I felt like, but I was like, it still sounds good though. It reminded me a lot. I have limited, since I switched over to almost exclusively to hip hop, like I don't know however many years ago, but it reminded me of like Yola Tango, who I like a lot, and a little bit of Luna. That's not to say it's derivative at all. I mean, that's just like my point of reference. How everything has to have a point of reference to someone, and
yeah,
it's so well put together. It's fucking pretty amazing.
So Sean,
yeah, I'm really happy with it.
So like Sean or Luke or I haven't heard it, but Sean, since you're the most familiar with it, like would you ever turn the lights down low, maybe put in the red light bulb, and then throw on "I Come to Shanghai" to like sort of set the mood?
I could never do that, but it was funny. What I did think was that Melissa, my girlfriend, I'm like, I know I'm going to give her this, and I know she's going to really like it. But I bet like it doesn't matter that she knows who created it. That she would probably think, oh, this is great, and totally like dig on it and be willing to go, see them perform.
If you want, I could maybe I could give it a go and let you guys know how it plays out.
Yeah,
with your mini
dude, you
lady.
gotta try that. Did you try to like get your Mac on?
No,
I Come to Shanghai.
No, for sure. I'll give it a go.
That would be like for me. That would be like Robert watching me like beat off or have sex or something. Nah, B.
Sorry, man, you can't be here.
Trying to seduce. After all the years, though, I like how Robert, your voice, you're getting. I'm getting confused. Anyway, you told me that I sound like Spicoli. Remember when you first met? You're like, man, you're totally Spicoli. I was like, great. Thank you for the fucking compliment, asshole. But then everyone started saying, once you put your podcast out and new people are being introduced to your voice, they're like, did this guy smoke a pound of weed before he taped?
Dude, you do sound like Spicoli.
You're Spicoli.
Oh, dude.
No.
Yes. Everything just clicked into place like a final Lego in a fortress.
Spicoli. Well, Robert. Well, who's Robert then? What other quintessential stoner is he?
I'm my own brand. Yeah, I don't know what it is about your voice. I mean, you don't sound entirely like Spicoli to me, but early on the sound. I think it's just the sound of Southern California.
Which is where I spent a lot of my years.
Yeah, it's not like you are a Spicoli type or anything. It's just that there's this certain voice. I mean, it's not a bad thing. It's just funny. It's also funny knowing that you have that voice because you are not a Spicoli. So it's just a weird contrast. But yeah, I don't know. I think I don't know why people always think that I'm stoned. But I'm not.
I know.
I promise.
The same thing I get too. It's like not so much on radio, but like every place I've ever worked. And I'm sure I've talked about this before back when we did GFW radio. But there's always someone that comes up to me and goes, "You're high, aren't you?" And I was like, "Fucking rip, dude. The morning glory on. I talk about weed on dust."
Well, shit. Well, are we?
So yeah, we're just like sputtering our way out, but hopefully, I do recommend that people listen to. Are you going to put like you're going to basically make your album so that people can download it for free and donate whatever they want, a la Radiohead?
Yeah, we're going to have like a relaunch of our website, and there will be like you can pay whatever you want and download it. If you pay a certain amount, we'll send you a CD, and there will be a music video, and there will be various attractions on the site, but it'll probably what we're waiting on is for the final album cover art, and then the CDs will take a couple of weeks to turn around. So my best guess is in about 3 weeks. So
you thinking if it proves popular enough, you're going to tour?
Well, we are spending our afternoons these days working on a live show. It's really hard though because it's just me and one other guy.
Yeah,
and the album is like as if we had like a 14-man band or something.
Yeah, I wondered about that. It seems like there are tons and tons of tracks on there, like really
Yeah, so we're doing it like well, we haven't figured out exactly how we're doing it, but we're starting out doing it almost as if we're like an electronic music
You should
thing.
you should sit at a table with like a DAT and pretend that you're like digging for records in a record crate.
We're using like samples from the album and stuff, and synthesizers, and trying to figure it out. It kind of sucks for me because I really like to play drums live, and I think that drums are my favorite thing to see someone play live. But
Not trying to be
it's been
all like
really hard to work that into our thing. So yeah,
okay. Well,
but cool.
on that note, we're signing off. This has been the third episode of Out of the Game. Luke, I want to inform you that this is indeed the podcast that you've been involved with.
That's a good. Thanks. It's good to know that.
And let us know how it goes. If you get any play with Come to Shanghai Play,
Well, I don't have it yet. I mean, I need to. Once I get the record,
I'll get you a link.
I'll send you a link.
the summer season will be upon us, and then I'll put it up there. I'll put it up there against Red House Painters and see which one works better.
But, dude,
Okay.
that'll be what'll be awesome though is this is like if like she actually asks you to change it or to turn it, or you realize that you have to if you want to get in play.
Or I'm like, this just isn't working. Or what if it's just like it is like I feel like Robert's in the room with me. And like I'm being watched, and I get like performance anxiety. It's like when you're at the urinal and other dudes walk up and like surround you on both sides, and you're like, whoa. It'll be like that, but with chicks.
I feel like it would be not the greatest music for love making because it's like changes a lot. I feel like you want something that
You want a consistent beat?
yeah, well, not a consistent beat, but you want a consistent atmosphere.
You want a rhythm that changes up with the position, son.
How long is your record? Well, I need to put it on repeat.
So it's 44 minutes.
Nope, that's long enough.
All right. Well, I'll send you a link.
Okay, we hope that you come to Shanghai too. We're done. That's it. We're done. We're out. We're over.
Hi, folks. Back in here again. And I'm fucking deaf. Right, folks. Fuck this.
Reese's, Hershey Mixers, Kit Kat, Sunrit Patties, Reese's, Hershey Mixers, Kit Kat, Sunrit Patties, Reese's, Hershey Mixers, Kit Kat, Sunrit Patties, Reese's, Hershey Mixers.